Manner of Death. Special Chapter. Sorrawit. My mother once told me that the streets around the city at night were scary, for they filled with thugs who would come to mug you along the way. I'd never believed her until today. My class with Teacher Tan had just ended at 8:45 p.m. I decided to take the belt line, for I wanted to get something for my mother at the supermarket before I went home. The air was chilly today, freezing to my bones, especially when the chilly gust of wind hit my face while I was on my motorcycle. I slowed the vehicle down in the process to alleviate the force of the icy wind. I wished all school uniforms in the north were a pair of trousers. I then saw the silhouette of a group of people standing on the side of the road with their motorcycles. I glanced at my back view mirror, preparing to swing to the right. When I turned to the road ahead, one of them rushed forward with a big wooden stick. I let out a yelp of surprise and raised my arm to block the club. Afterward, everything happened all too fast for me to catch up on the details. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the side of the road, my motorcycle skidding some distance away. I sat up frantically, the acute pain flaring all over my body. I looked from left to right in panic.
"Ho ho ho, we've got a schoolboy,"
I heard someone from behind. I whipped my head around and found a man in a black t-shirt and jeans. He walked over to me and I tried to stand up on my feet, but paused at the sight of another dude towering over me. He was the one who hit me with the stick.
"Why did you make a funny face, brat?"
I gaped. My body began to shake all over out of fear.
I didn't do anything. I saw you make fun of me back there."
His lips curved up in amusement. He looked familiar, like I'd met him somewhere before.
"What do you want?"
I asked hesitantly while thinking of my parents. Will I get back to them alive?
"Nice motorbike."
The man holding the stick pointed to my motorcycle, which was laying on its side.
"How about we take care of it for you?"
I looked at it. The motorcycle was a gift from my mother through her hard-earned money from her cow-tum mud business. Why the heck would I hand it over to some stranger?
"No!"
The thugs laughed in unison. I looked around, squinting my eyes in the attempt to count the number of men in the darkness. As far as I could see, there were 3 of these bastards right now.
"Oi, would you look at that? You've got some guts, don't you? Others would have tucked their tails and ran. Well, I'll take it regardless."
The man with the stick took my collar and yanked me up. He raised the stick in his hand, ready to drop the blow on me again. I quickly raised my arms to block the attack, my eyes shutting tight to brace myself from the impending pain.
"Oi, Kang."
A raspy voice would be heard from behind, causing the crazy man with the stick to halt mid-attack. I hesitantly opened my eyes.
"What the fuck are you doing?"
Kang turned to the source of the voice, obviously frustrated.
"This fucker started it. What the fuck are you talking about? He hasn't said a word."
A man appeared in my line of sight, a burly one wearing a dark t-shirt. Some part of his features remained cloaked in the shadow since the streetlights didn't leave enough light to see his face clearly.
"Let him go."
Kang made an inaudible ch before reluctantly releasing my uniform. And then I realized why I found his face so familiar. I'd seen him before at school. I presumed he was a junior colleague from school.
"Why are you here, Thad?" "Mr. Black wants to see us. Now."
The new guy shouted with a resolute voice.
I hear ya."
Kang turned to look at me and pointed the stick towards my face.
"Tell the police, and you're gonna be in some crazy deep shit."
I tried to pick myself off of the ground as the gangsters got on their motorcycles and drove off, one after the other. In the span of a millisecond, I caught a glimpse of the guy who just came in, the gang leader whose face and personality appeared formidable. His hair was close cropped. He looked probably more handsome than the rest of the 3, but I was pretty sure this man must be more ruthless than the 3 combined. I limped towards the motorcycle lying on the side of the road. Luckily for me, my trusty motorbike was unharmed, but one thing was certain, I would never come near this route ever again.
Oh, miss, please, you're hurting me.
I yelped, practically thrashing around in pain when the ER nurse scrubbed my wounds with a cotton swab. The swab must have been soaked in acid, that's why it stung so much. You should have come here sooner, young man. The accident happened last night, no? As if to prove her point, the nurse forcefully scrubbed my wound harder this time.
I'm sorry. I didn't know it would hurt this much, so I went to bed.
I could feel the dampness of my tears at the corner of my eyes. Look at you. Now I don't know which part is dirt, which part is dried blood. How about we scrub it all out? Looked like she was enjoying this. I could only hope that the nurse was just trying to bluff me. I tried to look around the room to distract myself. I saw a petite female doctor talking to a patient, a nurse taking a blood sample from an old lady, and a man rushing into the emergency room. I lifted my head from the hospital bed, eyeing the man who was being chased by a nurse. Dr. Bunn! Dr. Bunn! Oh, he's a doctor. I figured. That's why he looked so attractive. He seemed to be a different rank, comparing to the female doctor who came to examine me. Eh? He still came here for work? The nurse who helped me with the wound seemed interested in the doctor who just came into the ER a moment ago.
Is he an attending physician?
I turned to question the nurse. My heart was racing for an unknown reason. A forensic physician. I thought he was sick. But why did he still clock in? The nurse started to cover my wounds with the gauze. I let out a sigh of release once this inhumane torture was over. You'll see him in a moment. He'll be the one to give you a medical certificate.
Meet him?
So why did I get so excited about this? I didn't understand myself either.
Really?
The nurse laughed. Keep it down, would you? I'll give you the first cue when I finish with your wounds. The other patient in his appointment won't be here anytime soon. I never thought that today would be the day I met the man who had become my inspiration, a role model whom I wanted to be when I grew up. I lacked self-confidence, but I had a big dream of helping those in need. He was the embodiment of everything I wanted to be. Great personality, maturity, prudence, reverence, and excellency. How could anyone achieve all these?
What's your name, Doc? You look lovely, Doc. Did you know that?
Obviously, I probably shouldn't have said what I said. I thanked my lucky stars Dr. Bunn gave me his name. I carried my bag out of the classroom after saying goodbye to Teacher Tan. This was the last period of the intensive tutoring course before we took the quota test. Frankly, I couldn't concentrate on study at all, and what had been nagging me wasn't the stress that came with the impending exam, but it was the news that had been broadcasted in the past 2 days. My favorite doctor had gone missing. No one knew if he was dead or alive. What exactly is going on here? The only lead I got was a group of thugs Dr. Bunniket tried to investigate earlier. I secretly wondered why he would want to know about the thugs who had ambushed me that night. But since it was his request, I gladly investigated for him. It must be related somehow. Of this I was sure. Dr. Bunn must have tried to do something to eliminate the gangster because he didn't want to see innocent people getting beat up in the middle of the night. It was my fault. I shouldn't have told him anything. I should have stayed put, but if I did so, he wouldn't be impressed with me. I massaged my temples.
Why did this have to happen right now? How am I supposed to concentrate on my study in times like these?
I walked with my head down until I reached the stairs. The sound of heavy footsteps climbed up the stairs, but I didn't pay much attention to it. Not until I felt someone bump into my right shoulder and went ahead of me. I looked back in annoyance, but the person who walked past my shoulder just took a brief glance at me before he continued on his path.
What the hell?
Not a word of apology came from his lips. Then my footsteps came to a halt as I remembered something. I spun around and stared at the back of the person who walked into me earlier. He wore a grey short-sleeved shirt. He wasn't tall, but burly and strong. The man knocked on the door of the room I had just left before entering the room. I crept towards the door, my heart pounding erratically when the memory of last night returned to me. I was ambushed by a group of teenagers. And this guy was the thug leader, the man who stopped Kang from beating my head to a pulp. And shortly after, I tiptoed to the door. I could hear the lock click from the inside. I put my damp, sweaty palms against the wooden door painted in white before slowly pressing my ear against the surface of the door. Teacher Tan knew the leader of the gangsters? Was this guy also his student, or was he one of his cousins, or...
Sorrawit.
I jumped in the air when my name was called from behind. I whipped my head around, seeing Kor, my friend, staring at me in confusion.
What are you doing, dude? Come on, let's go. I've been waiting for you.
I just remembered that Kor asked me to give him a ride home.
Kor, can you walk home yourself? Something came up, and I gotta stick around for a while.
Kor looked like he just tasted something awful.
Fine. I'll go home myself. Tell me next time if you can't give me a ride, would you?
Alright, I'm sorry. I told Kor to walk home by himself. In fact, his home wasn't even far from the cram school. But since I had always driven my motorbike by his home, he often asked me to give him a ride. My friend raised his hand as if to say, whatever, before turning on his heels and walking down the stairs. I turned my attention to the room once again. Today I'll find out what exactly was the relationship between Teacher Tan and the leader of the thugs. I pretended to walk out of the cram school, trying to act casual. I sporadically glanced at the thug leader. He was walking towards a motorbike parked in front of the school. Seeing this, I immediately rushed towards my motorcycle, hopping onto the seat and starting the engine without delay. I took off at the same time my quarry accelerated his vehicle. I tried to keep a proper distance in order to not get caught. I had thought his destination would be some sort of bar filled with thugs and bullies, but turned out he went to a small townhouse in the middle of the city. I parked the motorcycle at the threshold of the alley and leaned in to see the man getting off his motorbike and opening the gate. He went inside the townhouse and got into an old, small red car parked in there. I waited until I saw him drive down the road. "Where are you going?" I mumbled to myself before I got onto my motorcycle and followed him without hesitation. Luckily, the car I'd been following was a vibrant shade of red, and its old condition made it impossible to outrun my motorcycle. I could drive from a certain distance without losing sight of him. On both sides of the road, the volume of buildings were dwindling by the second. I wondered where he was going. We were about to reach another district, and the light of the evening sun was about to disappear from the earth. The red car stopped on the side of the road after reaching a neighborhood. I quickly veered into the alley before I left the motorcycle there and sneaked out. From afar, I spot the thug leader walking toward a car parked in front of his car and staring at a house with a blue roof, a shocked expression on his face. He ran back to his car, yanking the door open and relocating the car into the next alley. I came out of the hiding spot, utterly puzzled with my query's action. But then I looked at the same house the thug had seen earlier, and I understood why he had that terrified look on his face. A group of 4 men was blocking the gate leading to the house. They were dressed in all black and talking to each other in serious, terrifying looks. One of them was holding something in his hand. I couldn't catch a good look at it at first, but when the man lifted it up, I was petrified. A gun. Suddenly, one of them spotted me across the street and met my eyes. My heart fell to my feet, trying to avoid his gaze, and turned back to my motorbike. Shit, I shouldn't have been here in the first place. As I was trying to find the way back to my vehicle, someone grabbed me by my collar from behind and pulled me into a bush. I let out a yelp of surprise, but a mysterious hand covered my mouth right away. I was about to scream, but the person behind me said something that rendered me speechless.
Quiet, if you still want to live.
I automatically clamped my mouth shut. I turned my head back and found an impassive, fierce face of the person who had yanked me down. He was trying to look through the bush. It was the thug leader.
Who are those people?
I whispered nervously when the thug leader removed his hand from my mouth. He looked at me coldly. I just noticed that he was kind of handsome. His skin was a shade of tan from spending his time under the sun.
I should be the one asking you. Who are you, and why did you follow me?
I was about to open my mouth in response, but the thug brought his fingers to his mouth as a sign for me to stay silent. I tried to peek through the bush, but it was no use. I didn't know how he knew what was going on out there.
Follow me.
All of a sudden, he grabbed my arm and pulled me along. We traversed through the garden near the house and came sprinting from the alley where the gangster's leader's car was parked behind a tree.
Get in the car.
Huh? Even though I was still dumbfounded by this whole situation, I slid into the driver's seat. The thug rolled down the window and looked straight at the blue-roofed house. He fished out the cell phone and called someone.
Mr. Black, I'm already here, but Zoom's men are also here. I barely had time to make my swerve into the alley. Good thing I didn't take my motorcycle, though. Yes, this doesn't look good at all, man. Paul will surely find your ma. Zoom and his men waltz in and out of every house around here. That house had it much worse. There are maybe 3-4 guys blocking the door, Mr. Black.
The thug sighed.
I have no idea how they know your ma is there. I couldn't get here fast enough. I'm sorry.
My eyes widened in shock. The thug was talking to his boss, Mr. Black.
Why the heck would I do that? This is serious. I'm hiding in my car right now. If anything changes, I'll call you.
The thug ended the call and turned towards me. Without any warning, he yanked the collar of my student uniform and pulled me down to him.
I saw you at Teacher Tan's school. If I wasn't in a hurry, I would have knocked you down on the road a long time ago. Why are you following me? Who is Mr. Black?
I trembled slightly at the sight of the thug's steel gaze up close. He frowned.
You don't get to ask questions. Now answer me. Why did you follow me? If you don't talk, I'll make sure you suffer for this.
I didn't quite know how to put this. Yes, I was afraid of death, but my curiosity outweighed my fear. I didn't know why, but up close, my fear of the guy in front of me had strangely disappeared.
I want to know who you work for. Who is Mr. Black? And does he have something to do with Dr. Bunnicutt's disappearance?
The thug looked at me coolly for a moment before releasing my collar. He pushed me back to the seat.
Should have let you get killed by the bullets right there. I saved you because you waltzed in like an idiot and made yourself a target. If they followed you here and saw us, we're both screwed.
I looked at him nervously.
Why do we have to hide?
The thug leader shot me an annoyed look. He was about to say something, but someone entered our visual frame. A pair of men showed up at the entrance of the alley, walking straight to our direction. One of them had a gun in his hand. I exclaimed and tried to sink further down on the seat to hide from them.
Shit!
The thug leader started the engine in that instance. He floored the pedal and turned the car around. Because the alley was super narrow, the bumper of his car scraped the mango tree in front of some unfortunate guy's house. I could do nothing but hang in the door's armrest for my dear life and scream. I shut my eyes tightly. I thought I would hear the sound of gunshots followed by the sound of bullets penetrating the windshield, like in one of the movies, but I heard nothing except the sound of the engine and the shift of a gearbox. I slowly straightened in the seat. At this moment, the thug was driving through the alley. I saw the main road ahead, only 10 more meters away. The nightfall had arrived, and the streetlights began to illuminate the path before us.
My motorbike!
I cried, and turned to look behind me.
How am I supposed to come back for my motorbike? Leave it,
he commanded in a firm voice.
How am I supposed to go to school tomorrow?
I rubbed my temple.
Ugh, damn it. Brought this on yourself, you idiot. You go back now, and you're dead meat.
The thug made a grouchy face.
Now I can't get my job done. My boss is gonna be pissed. That's for damn sure.
I turned to look at the thug.
Your boss is the man you just went to see, no? He's Teacher Tan, right?
He made a sudden turn to the right, onto the main road, as if he wanted to give me a headspin.
It's not him. Keep talking, and I'll cut your head off.
I started to feel like he wasn't bluffing, so I let my words die in my throat. I stealthily took a glance at the man on the driver's seat from time to time. The things that made him look scary was the way he carried himself and the tone of his voice rather than his actual appearance. He was burly, true, but he wasn't very tall, and he was quite good looking. If he smiled a little, he might look even cuter. His scary eyes met my scared ones, and I had to frantically look outside the car. How can I get distracted? My goal was to figure out where Dr. Bun was.
Where are you taking me?
I turned to ask him.
Seems like you know too much. I'll take you to my boss and ask him what to do with you,
said the thug leader, sending goosebumps all over me.
Ugh, I'm screwed.
I turned around undecidedly, trying to figure out a way to get out of this car. Should I just open the door and hop out? The thug said nothing more. He pulled out the phone and called someone.
Hey, how is it go? What did you say?
His voice filled with shock.
Where are you? I'll be there. No, how would you do this alone? Hey!
The thug looked down at the phone frustratedly and pressed call again.
Damn, now he's not answering my phone.
He called himself Thad, which was probably his name. Maybe I didn't have to meet his boss today after all. Thad looked more than agitated than usual. He seemed genuinely concerned about Mr. Black. He pressed call for the third time before throwing the phone into the cup holder with a thud.
Calm down, please.
I didn't know what to expect, trying to comfort him.
Where do you live?
Thad demanded out of nowhere.
I live in Naivyang,
came my hesitant reply.
Show me the way, or I'll leave you here, and you can walk yourself home. The gang leader is gonna give me a ride home? Did I just hear him right?
Thad no longer paid me any mind, as he now seemed distracted. Isn't this a bit extreme? Anyway, if Mr. Black really was Teacher Tan, then it would explain how Thad had the privilege of roaming freely in and out of his school. Or are they in some kind of relationship? When we entered the area of the capital district, I told him where I lived. My house was on the main road, a 2-story single house, with a big vinyl sign on the fence saying, Classic Recipe, Cow Tongue Mud. A phone number was written below the sign for customers who were interested in buying or selling the sweet. Even though the car had arrived at my house, I was still hesitating to go in and see my mother, not knowing how to explain why my motorcycle went missing and why I came home late.
Get off. What are you waiting for? Stop wasting my time.
Thad's insulting voice caused me to flung the door open in my haste. I stood in front of the fence, watching the red car rush off. I felt lost. My school bag, my books, my wallet, all were stored in the motorcycle. Sorrawit? Are you back already? My mother's voice hit my ears. I shut my eyes tightly, unable to come up with a plausible excuse. I slowly turned back to my mother, who was standing at the gate. My smile didn't reach my eyes.
I'm back, Ma.
I knew it was a matter of time before my mother found out that Cor hadn't actually borrowed my motorcycle, so I needed to get my motorcycle back today. After my mother dropped me off at school this morning, I went to P, my friend, and begged him to take me to where I had left my motorcycle.
Fine, if it's not far, I'll take you there.
To my relief, Fee, my dear friend, agreed to help. After the morning ceremony, I went to year 12, class 1, my classroom on the 3rd floor, also known as the gifted class. I was one of the top students in my class because I was determined to become a doctor. I studied hard in every academic subject to prepare for the medical exam. My seat was in the back due to my height. After settling myself into my chair, I stared blankly out of the window, thinking what was going to happen to Dr. Bunnikid, and had Thad already reconciled with Mr. Black, his beloved boss. In my boring high school life, I rarely came across a surprise these days, and what happened today indeed surprised me immensely. As I was walking towards the parking lot with Fee, I saw my motorcycle parked in front of the stairs of the building.
Hey!
I screamed at the top of my lungs. Fee turned his head to me in confusion.
That's my motorbike. You don't need a ride anymore then? But how?
I ran over to check the license plate and the tiger print sticker on the right side of the motorcycle to make sure it was unmistakably mine.
Who brought it here?
There was only one person who knew where it was and who it belonged to. To be loved by all, my mother had taught me to always show gratitude and kindness to the person who helped us by giving the presents in return. I drove back home to shove some of my mother's cowtown mud into a plastic bag, and with the bag in my hand, I went to Thad's house. I looked up at a small old 2-story townhouse. Thad's motorcycle was gone. Only the small red car with scuff marks at the front bumper remained. Never had I thought that the thug leader would be such a nice guy. Beneath the layers of ruthlessness he radiated, his sweet, amorous side stayed hidden below. He must have done all these terrible things to conceal this side of him. It was late evening, and I intended to wait for Thad until 6 p.m. If he still hadn't returned, I would hang the gift bag on the fence and see him some other time. I was sitting on the motorcycle seat, pulling out my cell and opening up the popular social network. I kept scrolling down the feeds to pass the time. I was on the brink of gliding through one of the newsfeed, but my eyes stumbled upon some words in the headlines. Famous tutor arrested in kidnapping of pathologist. Expected involvement in murder. And the picture under the headline was Teacher Tan's handsome face. It was unbelievable that my tutor would do such a thing, which meant that his involvement with the gangsters was probably real. And the pathologist on the news must be Dr. Bunnicket, right? My heart was beating madly while I was waiting for the news page to load, and of all the shitty times my internet signal chose not to work properly, now was the worst. It kept me on the edge of my seat, and I couldn't really focus on what was on the news. But one thing was certain, Dr. Bunn was alive and safe. I raised my arms above my head, ecstatic. Dr. Bunn's back!
What are you doing here?
A baritone voice made me put down my hands. I turned to the source and found the thug standing there with a bag of groceries in one hand. I stammered awkwardly before handing the bag of cowtown mud over to the man in front of me.
Came to say thank you for bringing back my motorbike.
Thad looked at my gift bag coolly and made his way towards his house as if nothing had happened. I frowned, offended by his behavior.
When someone brings you a gift, you should take it.
I walked over and grabbed his arm, preventing him from walking into the house.
Please, take it.
Thad jerked his arm away and spun around. He raised his hand as if preparing to land a blow. I could only yelp inwardly, "Shit," and quickly raised my arms to protect my precious face. This was going to hurt. But the punch never came. A hand was placed gently on my head instead. I slowly lowered my guard, looking at the person in front of me, confused.
Thanks.
Thad's voice was the usual terse tone, but I could detect a hint of gentleness in his attitude. Thad snatched the bag from my hand before heading into the house. I was rooted on the spot, and it felt like an eternity. I opened and closed my mouth several times before I felt something hot growing in my chest. I covered my mouth with my hand, my face heating up like I had a fever. Never had I thought someone could be even more charming than Dr. Bunnicket. How come a gang leader can be so darn cute? How is that even possible? Thad was 2 years older than me. He was studying mechanical diploma at the trade school. This was all I knew for now. I didn't know how Thad got involved with thugs, or if he really was Teacher Tan's subordinate, but I wanted to know more about him. It was true I was quite taken with him because he was cute, but I also found him really charming. The ruthless thug leader should never possess such gentleness. It just seemed wrong. I thought of going to see Dr. Bunnicket at the hospital to see if he came back to work yet, but instead I decided to wait for Thad in front of the industrial technology in mechanical building to catch him on his way out. The ambience in trade school was noticeably different than the traditional high schools. The students here looked more mature than me. When they finished their education here, they'd have specific skills for actual work in their chosen field, earning a living, while I had to study at the university for at least 4 years with no job offers guaranteed after my graduation. I straightened my school uniform and peered into the building, feeling hopeful. The last time we talked, I didn't ask for his number or line contact. This time, I wouldn't miss it. "Hey, little man, waiting for someone?" A woman's voice called out for me. I turned to her nervously. She's dressed in a uniform, a long-sleeved shirt and grey tie. Her skirt was slightly above the knee. She looked kind of pretty, actually.
"A friend, sir,"
I replied shyly. "Really? I'm waiting for my boyfriend. His class ran very late today." She looked at the watch. "Shall we wait for them on the bench?"
"Oh, sure."
I followed her to the marble table. She pulled out her cell and said nothing more. I fished out my own phone to follow the news of Teacher Tan. Less than 5 minutes later, the sound of energetic chatter blared from the building. I rose to my feet, but the young woman next to me was faster. She ran out to the man she had been waiting for, grasping his arm tightly and speaking sweet words to him with an ecstatic face.
And the person she ran to was Thad. "Well, Sorrawit, you're out of the game."
I clenched my fists, swallowing this pain. Sometimes I always forgot that not all good-looking people in the world were single. Especially the one who looked so awesome and handsome like Thad. He deserved a girlfriend like the pretty girl. He deserved more than a lanky nerd like me. While I was standing there, dumbfounded, Thad met my eyes just a brief moment. I quickly turned away with my head down, leaving. I averted my eyes from the book and looked up at the ceiling in my bedroom. I had lost my concentration to study once when Dr. Bunn had disappeared, and I did it once again when I found out Thad already had a girlfriend. If I were to vent my bitterness to my friends, they would have called me insane. So why did Thad bring me the motorbike? Why did he have to stroke my hair like that, making me confused? I covered my face with my palms. I just don't get it. I can't do this anymore. I need to talk to Thad. I rose to my feet, looking at the clock on the wall. 8:45 p.m. Mom was probably preparing the baking ingredients in the back, and Dad must be lying on the sofa, watching the news. I walked out of the room, slowly sneaking down the stairs, trying to sneak past behind the sofa, on which my dad was sitting, without tipping him off. I quietly opened the door, and when I got out, I ran to my motorcycle, igniting the engine and rushing off. I headed to Thad's house, but I was utterly darkened, and his motorcycle was nowhere to be seen. I decided to drive to one particular place, and if I was lucky, he might be there with a group of thugs who had once ambushed me. The ring road around the town at night always emanated this eerie atmosphere. I had been determined not to revisit this part of town, but the call of my heart cried louder than my fear. I drove to the same place where I was laid by the gangsters. My mind fell when there was no sign of them around here. Do I have to wait until tomorrow? Stupid. I'd seen him so many times, but never asked for his contact. My phone buzzed in my pocket. My mother must have called. I pulled it out, just as I expected. It's her. I took the call with a listless voice.
"Where are you?"
She sounded angry.
"I'm outside. Be back in a minute."
"Hurry! Your friend Thad's here? He's been waiting." I was speechless for a moment.
"What did you say?"
"Oh, my boy has weak ears. Come home, this instant." My mother screamed into the phone before hanging up. I blinked, trying to figure out what was going on. Thad came to see me at my house? I couldn't find him, but now he was at my house? Home, here I come. It took me only 10 minutes to drive home. I must say it was the most exciting trip I had ever had in my entire life. I opened the door with a loud bang and found Thad, sitting and chatting with my father. He paused and looked up at me with an unchanging expression. The man dressed in a black t-shirt and navy blue soccer pants. I took a deep breath and slowly exhaled.
"There he is. Your friend's growing roots here, son."
My father grinned. I found myself staring at him nervously, lost on what to do. I couldn't say anything right now either.
"Don't just stand there. Take your friend upstairs."
I nodded slowly. Thad stood up and walked to the stairs as if waiting for me to lead the way. I approached him, eyeing him from head to toe before reaching for his wrist and leading him upstairs. I brought Thad into my room and locked the door, turning to face him.
What are you doing here?
Before I could even finish, I felt a firm punch land on my face. I staggered to the bed, my hand covering my cheek, genuinely confused.
Are you avoiding me?
Thad demanded with an intimidating look.
When did I do that?
I exclaimed.
Earlier. After you saw me, you ran. Don't think I didn't see you.
So he's angry because of that? For crying out loud. And what was that for? Thad frowned.
Isn't it obvious?
There was a moment of silence between us. I opened and closed my mouth several times. What was it that should be obvious? A long sigh escaped Thad's lips.
Forget it.
I tried to force myself up, confused and dazed.
I ran because I saw you with your girlfriend.
I carefully watched his reaction and stepped away out of fear of being punched again.
I just realized that you were with your girlfriend.
Thad watched me silently. I felt like someone had turned on a tap of words inside me, so I continued.
Yes, I did go to see you. I didn't even know why I did. And then I saw you with your girlfriend. Why on earth would I stick around? You like me?
The impact of his question knocked the wind out of me even more effectively than his fist did.
I think so?
I scratched the back of my head, my face heated up like I had been attacked by fever once more. I then saw something that I never expected to see. Thad smiled. A light smile emerged across his lips as if he was satisfied. Thad invaded my personal space, and I, whose back was on the door, could only make myself shrink even further.
Well, do you like me or not?
I shut my eyes tightly and trembled.
Maybe? Making you blush is fun.
Thad looked up at me and pinched my cheek. I blinked rapidly.
I remember you from the night one of my men ambushed you. They said you were trying to find who my boss is, so I've been keeping an eye on you for a while. Well, in case you know more about us, we could kill you before you could do anything. You're serious? I cried. But somehow, even though you're a nosy little brat, you're kinda cute.
Thad stepped away from me, but I refused to let him go any further. I grabbed his waist and pulled him closer. Thad's eyebrows rose, startled.
And who's that woman? My cousin. She's my friend's girl.
The revelation made my legs feel like gelatin.
So, you don't have a girlfriend? No. That means you could be my boyfriend?
Thad let out a laugh.
Did you even know my name?
Thad, it's Thad, I answered confidently. I don't know your given name, your age, your birthday, your number. I don't know who you are working for, but I'm sure I can find all these answers.
If you knew the answers, will you tell the police about what I'd done?
Thad demanded.
Of course, I wouldn't. If you get caught, then I won't have a boyfriend anymore, would I?
The way he looked started to make me feel like a love-struck idiot. Thad fisted the scruff of my collar and pushed himself away from the arms encircled around his waist.
Remember your words. If you know anything from me and go to the cops, my boyfriend or not, I'll kill you. I wasn't really sure why, but Thad's ferocity sparked excitement in me rather than fear.
I marched out of the emergency room, returning to my motorcycle with a cheerful attitude. Even though I didn't get to see Dr. Bunn, the confirmation was joined by chorus of the nurses that he had returned. I was so happy that my idol was safe and sound. Thad was waiting for me at my trusty motorcycle. He was dressed in a grey short-sleeved shirt, ready to go to the trade school. I'd drop him off first and then give him a ride home in the evening. I'd been doing this for him every day, almost for a week now. However, today I wanted to visit Dr. Bunn and give him a bag of cowtown mud at the hospital before I headed to school. Thad didn't seem to mind though.
Did you find him?
Thad asked, but I only shook my head.
The nurse said he isn't here yet. I don't want you to be late for school, so I left.
I got on the motorcycle. Let's go. Thad got on the back of the motorcycle after I put on my helmet and ignited the engine. I was about to take off, but Thad drew his face closer to say something in my ear.
I called Teacher Tan. He had sex with Dr. Bunn when they went missing.
I nearly choked on my own ear.
Too much information.
Thad had completely ruined Dr. Bunn's perfect image. I couldn't help imagining what he would do when he was alone with other men, nor could I stop my hormone-filled brain. But then my imagination was stopped abruptly when Thad smacked my helmet with his palm, as if he was well aware of what was on my mind. 2 days ago, I had confessed my feelings about Dr. Bunn to Thad, and the reason why I wanted to find out the truth about the gangsters was that I wanted to impress him.
Stay away from him. He's taken. You don't have to come here so much anymore.
But I was about to protest, but one more smack landed on my helmet.
Oh, okay. No more coming here. Only 15 minutes left before the clock would strike 8 a.m.
I accelerated the vehicle, intending to drop Thad at his destination and to reach my school before the flag-raising ceremony. Never did I think I'd have another person in my life to share a moment of happiness and sorrow. I paid no mind to the scornful eyes of others when they learned that I was dating a man, for it didn't matter whether the person I liked was a man or a woman. As long as that person made me happy and my heart glowed, I would stay with that person. The chilly morning air blew across my face, which was filled with happiness and hope. The situation turned back to normal again. I determined to study to get to medical school, and this goal of mine wasn't just about helping patients, but it was a lifelong goal to help my family and the persons I loved.
I'm sorry, Dr. Benekit, but I'm afraid I have to let you go and date a thug instead.
The end. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed this special chapter about Sorrawit and Thad's love story. Please subscribe and like the video and keep up with all the new projects coming up soon. Bye.